Thomas Green here with the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. On the episode today, we have Sam Asra. Sam, welcome.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you. How are you?
I am marvelous. Thanks for asking. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I'm a relationship expert. I have a program called Fathers Connect, and what we do is we help fathers save their relationship with their kids. So we have a coaching program where we um, teach them from A to Z all the strategies, all the tools to be a great father and connect with their children. Um, Where that came from was my personal story. I had a very rocky relationship with my father, and long story short, I was on the receiving end of, um, unfortunately, a broken relationship, and that inspired me to follow that journey of why and what happened, what could have been better, and take a real look on both sides. And I've been working with parents and kids for the last 10 years. And this has now inspired me to really create a cohesive program for fathers specifically, because I felt like fathers don't get a space to talk about this. They don't get really a chance, and there's nothing that really teaches them. With mothers and moms, at least traditionally with women uh, and families, it's almost like a familial thing. As you grow up, as they grow up, they're kind of taught through the how to be motherly, how to be nurturing, how to communicate, and emotional intelligence. Whereas fathers are generally taught in a traditional sense how to protect and how to provide. That's their kind of traditional role. And so, especially the older, more traditional fathers I work with, that has rung true. So that's what inspired me to be here and to do what I do. So
I think you're doing great work, so thank you for everything you're doing. You did say that you'd done some, should we say, inner work about how the relationship with your dad, how it went wrong, for lack of a better term. What did you conclude?
I concluded that had he been able to do the certain things, which is our certain things that we teach, such as taking ownership, that we could have reconciled. So to give you a little more context, unfortunately, I come from a strict Middle Eastern background, and they immigrated here, and then I was born, so I'm a first generation American, Arab American. And unfortunately, he was very, very abusive emotionally and physically to my mother and I. And he's done a lot of things that are very, very bad as far as that. And that's what led up to a divorce. And then he ended up fleeing the country and basically taking and draining all financial accounts, bank, retirement, everything, and wiring it overseas and never to see him again. His, malicious, right? So a couple years later, after all of that, and I summarized 20 years of abuse in a couple sentences. So of course, take that with for what it's worth. But even after all of that, he could have still been on talking terms, at least with me, because that's what he wanted. He wanted to reconcile. But unfortunately, when we did meet, and this was the final time, instead of taking full ownership and saying, "Yeah, here's what he said, and here's what he should have said. And this is what we teach." What he said was, I'm glad we can start a new chapter. We all made mistakes. We all done things, and I'm glad that we can move forward, and start a new chapter together. He waited till the last day to say that, by the way. It was very awkward for we stayed for like a week, didn't talk about the elephant in the room for 6 days, and the last day, the night before the flight, he decided to say that. And I realized that, you know, I started saying, like, how is this like my mom's fault? Like, how did she ask to be abused? Like, how did I ask to be abused? And and then it escalated, and then I was like, yeah, this is not gonna work. And what I realized is, had he said, look, this is all my fault. I've done some horrible things to you. And no matter what was said and what was done, I'm going to make it right. And I look forward to showing that to you. That just little difference was all it took, what it would have taken to reconcile, at least to start actually have, because that showed that you take ownership, even if there's other people at play. Of course, there's other people at play, but you decided as a leader to take on the burden and take responsibility. Um, and that is a huge difference and we teach this is his pride got in the way, his ego got in the way, his desire to be right or to not be the only person who's wrong got in the way. And that could be a cultural thing, could be an upbringing thing, but it doesn't matter. If you love your kids and you want a relationship with them, there are things that need to change. So anyway, that is what really inspired that. And then I had to do a lot of inner work. I was a very, very, let's say, turbulent kid, and I had to really come, do a lot of discovery, a lot of training, a lot of education. And again, I've worked on both sides and I understand both sides. I think that puts me in a unique position to really connect and really be able to do this work. So.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm very sorry you had to go through it, because, no kid deserves that, from their dad. How would you say it has changed you from not having a proper connection, with your dad, as an adult? Like, how has it changed you as an individual?
I mean, as unfortunate as it was, as painful as it was, I still would never, if I had to do it again, if I could choose, I still would have it done exactly the way it was done because it shaped me as a person that I love today. Yes, it took a lot of work. Yes, it took uh, you know, a lot of effort, a lot of failures, but I am, a very, very powerful, secure, confident person that is impacting lives and that is bringing about change. And I think without my story, I wouldn't be doing this work. Without the things that I've gone through, I wouldn't have the expertise and the knowledge and the experience and the drive to do this kind of work, or not just this work, but me as a person. So, I think my experiences shape who I am largely. So, you come to a place where you're very grateful, even though it's messed up, but you wouldn't be as disciplined, you wouldn't be as strong, you wouldn't be as inspiring, you wouldn't be all these things that what make you you if you had it perfect and stable. And you know what I mean? Not saying you shouldn't. I mean, I'm saying parents should strive to be stable and and responsible. But I'm just saying, already gone through it. I mean, I love where I am. I love myself. So I think, I'm just very grateful. Like, okay, it made me who I am, and we can call it even at that point. So
There is, that silver lining in adversity, right? Is that you can help others based on your experience if you do the work and you overcome it. In terms of, your expertise, what would you say? I know it's, a summary, but, what makes a good dad?
oh man. Well, we spent 8 weeks talking about that, but I will drop a few things here. Honestly, what one big thing that makes a really good dad is even so this is hard because if I say, okay, showing that you care, showing that you're present, but fathers show that they care, right? They think they show that they care because they pay for things. That I have a roof over your head, I'm paying your rent, like I'm paying your bill or I'm paying your phone bill, I'm paying this and that. Like, of course I care about you. I work 8 hours, 12 hours a day, whatever it is, to come home, put food on the table. Of course I care about you, right? But I think what sometimes is there's a disconnect is you lose sight of the child may not feel that way though. So like even though you're doing all these things and you may say to them that you do all these things, you would be surprised at what little thing would matter to them more. I'll give you an example. Um, I know a father that there's an experience where this father's wealthy, like can buy their son anything, whatever, whatever, and does, right? But the thing that mattered to them more than anything that they bought was this. I'll give you some context. The son had a performance, was working real hard. It's been months, been working on this performance. Is a singing performance, right? It was a show. He's very nervous. First show, first big show, whatever, whatever, right? Then, uh, just the day or two leading up to the show, father does takes 30 seconds and films a video, selfie video, 30 seconds. He didn't even have to be there with his son and said, I'm so proud of you. You're going to do great. I know you've been working on this. I've seen you working on this. I've seen you working incredibly hard. And I just want you to know that I'm cheering you on and I'm going to be there. And, I think, and you're going to absolutely rock and smash this concert. And what he replied was, that was the greatest thing I've, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen or I've ever heard or something like that. He was very touched. And that meant more to him than gifts, or I'm not saying gifts are don't mean anything, but I'm saying look how more powerful some of these things are if you just know that it means more to a child that you have their support and you've seen them work and that you are encouraging and supportive more to them than some other things that you might think are making a significant impact. So where are your efforts going? Are your efforts going into buying things, or is your effort like taking a minute out of your day and making a personalized video message to your son? Wishing them luck. Because that shows that you remember there was a show, you remember the date it was, you remember that he was working on it, you remember that he was nervous leading up to it, and like those things show that you care and that you were listening. I think that's really it. Listening and like remembering, right? If you know that your son is going through these things and you're there, it means way more to them. So that's what I would encourage. What makes a great father is definitely one component is that. Can you listen? And are you taking an interest in your child? And we teach that in the course on how to and what else. But really, are you taking an interest? Do you know your child's friend group? What are their names? Like, why does mom connect with child better? Because mom knows that, Johnny has three friends he hangs out with, and he knows their names, he knows what they do, they know where they hang out, they know when they hang out, how often they hang out, they know, the soccer practice, when soccer games, that's why mom connects more with child a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times. They connect more than dad. Dad just like, oh, how's your day? Oh, it's great. How's school? Great. Homework, good. Grades, good, good. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, yeah, of course, you're not gonna get the same connection. Instead of saying, how's Miss Matthews? I know you had a test last week on Friday, and you said it was a very hard test. The topic was I don't know, topic was graphing functions, so what did you like, how did you do? Is there any question you were stuck on? Like, you see how different that becomes of like, oh wow, he's really taking an interest. Sorry, I've been talking a lot, but I think that is what makes
No, no, I was happy
something
listening
something,
to it.
right?
And yeah, you summarized it well in the sense that you're taking an interest in their life, um, and you're also showing that you care. Essentially, is that a fairly accurate summary of your answer?
Yes, and it's unfair because fathers feel like I do care, I do these things, like, but I think the the disconnect is, where do you think, how much impact is it having? Yes, you put a roof over their head. Yes, you slave away at work. Yes, you do these things and you make the sacrifice. But you'd be surprised on how much weight that is in their life versus a 30-second video versus a text in the morning that says, "Hey, have a great day, son. I'll see you later." Like simple little things that would have a greater impact, than things that actually are harder, which is paying the rent and doing that. And kudos to fathers who are doing that. Like that is amazing, but just understand that it may not be as impactful to son, daughter, than that. So yes.
Yeah, it's a great point. I know it's somewhat, I don't know, the flip side of my previous question, but if you were to think of, some mistakes, some additional mistakes that fathers make, other than the ones we've talked about, what would you
Mhm.
say, common mistakes that dads make?
You could say, well, not listening, but I know you said other than what we talked about. Um, here's one mistake that happens, and this is tough, but I see a lot of dads in this situation where, let's say, they are divorced, right, and they have this like co-parenting situation, and there's something called parental alienation, where uh, spouse is uh, creating an image or possibly giving like saying things about dad that may or may not be true, may or may not be exaggerated, but basically painting a picture of dad, while the kid is with spouse. And it's hard for what does dad do? A lot of times dad defends himself. A lot of times dad may fire back and say, well, they're doing this and they're like this, or don't listen, you know what I mean? And say bad things back. Um, and that's a very challenging thing, especially when a lot of times, uh, at least in America, it's like a lot of times if it's a, you know, man woman like relationship, a lot of times the mother gets more custody and gets more time with the kid and gets more, unfortunately, that's a lot of the times what happens. And so if you're talking about, well, painting a picture and let's say convincing and being an influence on your kid on who's who and what in their life, you have a lot more time to do that when you're, you know what I mean, if you have more time with your child. And so what ends up happening is father spends a lot of time either defending himself or firing back and saying she's crazy or she's blah blah blah, and there's fighting. Big mistake fathers make is they focus on that, they don't focus on their kid. They focus on the back and forth, they focus on defending, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very perfectly reasonable thing to say, well, they're saying bad things about me, here are the bad things about them, and then it just keeps, it may escalate. Why is it a mistake? Well, for one, you're going to lose that battle because if you only spend 1 or 2 days a week and they spend 5 days a week, and you know what I mean, it's like mom can sit there and say, your dad, abused me, or your dad, it may or may not be true. I'm just saying your dad abused me. He's a terrible person. He's this and that. He never did these things. And I'm struggling and this and that, and you have way more time to influence your kid, during that time, especially if there's times where, especially if you live in different states, like are far away, you might have 9 months with kid and only 1 month, 2 months, whatever, 3 months out of the year with dad. So what I encourage dads to do then, is to focus on showing with your actions. If mom's saying, dad is a terrible person, he never shows up, he's never present, he never checks in, this and that, but you check in with your son, daughter all the time, at some point it's not going to add up. And then you, by showing your actions, is gonna speak louder than you defending yourself or you fighting back with words saying, well, she's done this and she's a terrible person and she's manipulative and crazy and whatever. Like, you let that reveal itself, whatever it is. So if you say, well, he's abusive, but you've never shown as a father that you are physically or emotionally or whatever, then again, you can ask those questions and say, look, son, daughter, like, have I ever done these things that she's saying? You know? So showing that to me is more powerful and more productive than focusing on back and forth, because then it becomes a he said, she said, battle conversation back and forth. And you may lose that because you just don't have as much time with them.
Thank you for the answer. Um, there is one which I think perhaps touches on your answer in a similar way, perhaps, which is the could be my perception, or I could be wrong about it, but my perspective is that women have a perhaps generally speaking, innate ability to be more patient with their kids, whereas with dads, I think it is a little bit more of a challenge, and
Mhm.
I think it's all relative in your ability to have patience. But what would you say if you could teach someone how to be more patient if kids are being difficult, for lack of a better term? What would you say to them?
Yeah, so I have a whole section on how to keep your cool. I'll drop a few gems here. So it's about keeping your cool and also about understanding why they're doing that. A lot of times they're not doing that just to anger you or to you know what I mean? Like my father was very impatient. If I didn't get like the math problem or whatever that was going on, he would get very upset. He would get very angry. And you know, one, it's not productive because it's not going to go any faster by you being upset. Um, and so I would say there's a couple things that I recommend. We do any kind of breathing exercises, meditation, walking away. Just say, I need to take a break. I'll be right back. Go take a walk. If it's on a call, just say, hey, let me go and let me go take this other phone call or whatever you have to do to kind of walk away from the situation if it's really upsetting you and like not being patient enough. A lot of times when someone is impatient is because they don't understand that this is normal. When something is like becoming impatient, it's like it's an expectation. It becomes an expectation. Like I expect my son or daughter to get this in 10 minutes. And because it's taking 30 minutes, now I'm getting impatient and because they're not getting it, right? So if you change your expectation to say, actually, it may take 30 minutes, an hour, and you get it in 30 minutes, all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, we're ahead of schedule because I expected it to take an hour. Now it took 30 minutes. So it's also like a perspective thing as well. But again, keeping your cool, and really also if you become impatient, I also advise to reflect on it afterwards, saying, kind of try and retrace your steps and say, well, what caused me to be impatient? And is it reasonable? Or could I have been a little more compassionate? So kind of asking yourself those questions and also, again, taking ownership. Was I not clear enough? Maybe I wasn't clear enough. Maybe, I was trying to tell them, but I had to do it 5, 10 times before they finally got it. Well, clearly, maybe I need to figure out a way that to communicate in a way that they understand. To frame it that way versus they don't get it and they're just not understanding and they're kids and whatever. They're not competent. To take this is about taking ownership. What can I do instead of, they're like they're just stupid or they're whatever it is, or they're slow or, you know, to say, okay, well, I know this person learns best through auditory means, hearing, right, versus visual. Okay, cool. So when I talk to them, done. Or maybe they're a visual learner. So I'm going to text them. I'm going to, you know what I mean? I'm going to do things that are more visual to guide them or teach them or communicate with them. Um, a lot of times also, um, impatience can be like an inner work thing too. Are you impatient in other areas of your life, or are you just impatient with your children? Um, there's a great book called Letting Go, by David, name escapes me, but very, very good book about basically if something like how do you let go of something that is frustrating you or being patient. Um, it is a very, very good book about being like mindfulness around, handling your emotions. Especially because if you're in a high stress work life and things like that, I understand you can, you know what I mean? Things can flare up. So, um, but yes, there's a lot of tidbits there. Hope that
Lots of
answers
good
your,
stuff.
yeah.
The example of knowing how your child how they learn the most effective way. If you were, I mean, it's possible that someone may already know the best way their child learns, but if they didn't, what would you advise? How would they find out?
Ask them.
That's
Because
one way.
likely they know what works for them. I mean, if they're old enough, right? A lot of times, like, hey, like, what's the best way do for me to communicate with you? You know? Especially because like there's sometimes like some people respond well to very direct like communication. Some people, you know what I mean? You need to have like a conversation, needs to be relaxed and calm, right? Some people, it's like, just do this, right? But it's like it always rubs them the wrong way if it's super direct. Some people like just, they get anxious or whatever, and it's like it's not an effective means of communicating as well. Um, so that's what I would say.
Any thoughts on around the the age range that, or perhaps the minimum age where that would be effective? Any, I mean, it doesn't have to be based on data or anything, just in your views.
I would say high school age or greater, like 10th grade, 11th grade and greater. If they're too young for them to know, um, I'm sure there are tests that you can take or that you can have them take to best do that. This also leads into love languages, which is something we teach as well. And this is not a new concept, but basically, kids and people in general like to receive love in different ways. And so this kind of goes back to what we touched on, which is, let's say a father focuses on gifts because maybe that's how they show love. That's how they show they care. But the way that the kid most resonates with them may be something like a quality time, which is time spent with them. So if you spend no time, but you spend thousands of dollars on gifts, that doesn't resonate with them as much as you making it clear that, hey, I'm busy as can be, but I took 4 hours to be with you and we're going to have some fun. And it could cost $20 to have that fun. You know what I mean? It could be a walk in the park, could be free, right? But that may mean more to them. So love languages is also a huge thing. Same thing with like physical touch. Like if someone is physical touch, your child might like to be embraced. Even though you're a father, you may not like the whole touchy thing, right? But if they receive they like hugs, they like to, you know what I mean, be arm in arm, or, you know what I mean, hand over the shoulder, arm over the shoulder, like, they feel loved that way, then that is going to be the most effective means for you to communicate your love to them. Another one is it words of affirmation. So what you say to them, saying I love you, saying yes. Some fathers have a hard time saying it, you know, but again, that might resonate more than the gifts or the time you spend with them or, or other things. So understanding that you get more bang for your buck, so to speak. Um, as far as that and resonating with your child. So yes, how they learn, how they communicate, and this all comes down to knowing your child very well, and that comes from asking questions, listening, and taking an interest. Like we said, it all kinds of goes hand in hand. If you know how they are in school, do you know what worked for them, what doesn't work for them, and over time you can develop a profile knowing how your kids are because they're different. One might love to be embraced, and the other one might hate to be embraced, but they love when you give them a gift. The other one, you know what I mean? They all have different personalities. So you cannot just treat them the same, but learning more about them I think, is very key. And I think that's what a lot of mothers do well, simply because they spend more time with them, and also they're generally more nurturing, and they take a deeper interest in, the kid's life, as far as like what electives, what extracurriculars, what are their classes, who their friends are. A lot of times mom is taking them to those places, or even just hanging out with him or her. So um, she knows more, and just by context of the type of friends, the type of electives they're in, are they more musically inclined? Do they like writing? Do they like art? Are they more math, science? Are they, you know what I mean? You can kind of start building a profile of what works for them. You know what I mean? And then you can build, okay, this person's a little more like on the sensitive side. So I have to cater to that and be more sensitive. Or this person responds well when it's more a matter of fact, and less abstract, and so I'm going to approach them that way. So that's how I would say there's not one size fits all, but it's really about learning your child. And that's, I think, what's going to really connect with them.
Yeah, I think you can make those conclusions once you're looking for it, but it's easy to I don't know, if you're busy or you're not quite
Sure.
paying attention, it's easy to miss that stuff. But when you're actually looking for it, you can make those observations, and I think it would be very beneficial for you to know that stuff because if you're doing the wrong thing and not even realizing it, you're not taking ownership, right? So
Yeah, and you're not being effective. Like, let's say you say, "Oh, I spent thousands of years." You don't even need to do that. If all they want is an embrace, all they want is a hug, like, like you don't need to do that. Or all they, or or they all they want is a couple hours with you. Like, save your thousands. You know what I mean? Like, it's also that. Like, you're trying, and that's awesome that you're trying, but like, let me help you be more effective. That's all it is. So, yeah.
there is something that I wanted to ask you about in your profile, and it's about energy with your kids, because obviously you're going to be, or the majority of people are going to be working and then also trying to be a good dad at the same time. So I don't know, from my own perspective, absolutely knackered, and that is extremely tired for anyone who's not in the UK. Your thoughts?
Yes. So, there's something that is a whole, again, another section, but there's something called Atomic Habits. There's a book called Atomic Habits, and you might have read it. But it's about how do I optimize things 1% better every day? How do I get 1% better every day? And so uh, what I teach is how do you take a holistic approach at your life, and and that's going to help you bring more energy and make you less tired. Okay, so what does that include? Okay, well, diet. What are you eating throughout the day? What are you putting? Do you know what the different macronutrients do to your body? Micronutrients. Are you getting all your vitamins? Are you getting enough protein, carbs, fats? Do you know what effect it has on your body? What different foods have on your body? And this is a slow process. This is not all, right away. And I'm not saying go on a diet, but if you're eating fast food, yes, you're gonna come home tired, even, whether you worked or not, frankly, right? So is there things you can do with your diet? A lot of people are low on vitamin D. That's just a fact of people nowadays because we don't spend enough time outside. We usually get our vitamin D from the sun, but since we don't, spend all our, most of our time farming or whatever, we don't get enough. And vitamin D is a very, very big uh, factor in energy, right? Like, once I started taking supplements of vitamin D, all of a sudden I got a lot more energy. So these little things, caffeine management, all these things, um, that's just diet, right? Then you can go into physical fitness, right? The more we move and the more we are physically active, the more energy we will have throughout the day. And it sounds counterintuitive. Why would I expend myself in the morning or wherever because I'm just going to be tired? It's actually the opposite. When you do that, you release all kinds of chemicals and you feel good and you feel, fresh and clear-minded. And this will help you with your patience as well because you kind of worked it out. You worked your frustrations out in the gym. You punched the punching bag or whatever else. You've already, you know what I mean? You're kind of like zen at this point. So physical fitness, same thing. It could be simple as a 15-minute walk in the morning. I don't want people to feel uh, intimidated by when I say diet or fitness, like it has to be a whole regimen and you're already busy enough. It could be just as simple as drinking more water and doing a 15-minute walk in the morning. Start there, 1% better, right? 1% better. You already got more energy, you got your hydration, all these things. Cool. Also, another thing we teach is how you leverage technology. A lot of times we do things the old way, the long way, and we don't realize that we're doing it because technology moves so fast and we're just used to using the things that we're using now, But I'm a big, big proponent of AI and ChatGPT, and all those things can help you save time. Even just minutes can save you hours, days, weeks. So even like on my laptop right now, like while we're having this call, um, when I navigate my computer, I use my computer all the time. When I navigate, I have optimized it so that I don't have to sift through folders. I just search the folder and I get there in 2 seconds rather than a minute. If you think about every time I navigate to this folder, you know, I save time, right? Even just optimizing that little thing. Or let's say I check my emails every day, right? Instead of taking a minute to open my tabs and get to the email and and type in the URL and have it load, I can do it in 5 seconds because I have a shortcut. Even those little things. Imagine how many times you check your email a day. Let's say 3 times a day, right? 3 times a day. That's 3 minutes a day, 30 days. That's 90 minutes a month. That's an hour and a half that you didn't have just by doing that one little thing for email. Now extrapolate that to everything you do. All of a sudden, you're saving hours and hours and even days of time that you can't get back. And that's the most precious commodity. And now that's time that you can spend with your son or daughter. So I think that, leveraging technology, leveraging Chat GPT, how long does it take you to craft a message? It's like, why don't you have an AI learn how you like to create messages and now use that to craft it for you? Or maybe hire a VA, hire an assistant. There's some tasks that we can delegate that we don't have to do, and we get back some time for not that much money, right? Or things can we automate that we do manually and we don't know there's a way to automate it because maybe like afraid or we don't want to change, don't fix what's not broken. But it's like, but we can get back time. And that's, again, that's valuable time. Then we can get back with our son. We can get more sleep. We can get more energy. It all kind of like, you see, like how this like holistic approach of like, okay, you know, and also you can schedule your day in a way that you might prioritize your child. So let's say you come home tired, right, after a long day of work and you don't want to talk and you want to go right to bed. Well, maybe you could wake up a little earlier and take your son or daughter to school. That's your special time in the morning. Or maybe you eat breakfast with them. That's your special time with them. That's the time that you focus on them. That way, when you come home, you've already had the time spent with them because you've already had deep conversation or not deep or whatever, meaningful conversation, meaningful time spent with them, right? That way, even if you come home late or come home tired, like you've already done your part that day. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be after work. So you could also consider scheduling or working them into your schedule in that way as well, so that you see them when you have more energy in the morning or before work or whatever. And also, like I mentioned, that father who took a minute to record a video and wasn't even with the son, right? Like you can be present in your child's life without also using technology and being a little more creative, you know, and a little mindful. And again, I think this is just something that needs to be taught. So for example, imagine if even if you couldn't be there, you surprise your daughter with flowers. They're in college, maybe it's exams, and all of a sudden flowers show up at her door saying, "Good luck, sweetie, on your exams, Dad." That could take you 5 minutes on the phone while you're driving to work to order that. You see, or like you order or Amazon on your app, 5 minutes in the bathroom. I'm gonna order my daughter loves these candies. Why? Because I listen and I ask and I know this about her. And her exam week is coming up. She's very stressed. I'm gonna get her these things and surprise her. Little things, right? So like even like I could argue that you may not need, not saying, if you have it, great, but if like you're absolutely, there's so many ways you can show that you care and you love them. You know what I mean? Not just coming home after work slumped and tired, which I understand. Totally valid. So
In regards to technology, have you got any thoughts about keeping kids off digital screens?
ugh, well, this gets into parenting territory, which, this is I'm more relationship, do focus on relationship, but I have worked with a lot of parents, and the way my personal opinion, and of course, people may think differently. I think technology needs to have definitely a balance. I would not have just unlimited uh, access to technology. Now you got to be careful because you know you have to play this balance because if you restrict too much, then they will you know if their friends have unlimited access to internet, right? They'll start feeling resentment towards you. Or they might start doing things behind closed doors or behind your back or playing on their friends, you know, like phone or whatever else, or spending, you know, because you can access internet in many different ways, right? So when you are too strict, even in anything for that matter, um, the child feels the need to kind of rebel, right? If you're not strict enough, of course, you know, you don't want to just hand them the iPad or whatever. I think from an early age, you should not give them, like if we're talking toddler, you know, young child, I don't think you should use an iPad to keep them quiet. I think that's a big mistake. Um, you know, because they become addicted to it. It's amazing. You have like 3-year-olds knowing how to surf YouTube. It's like, what is going on, right? You know, so I think that's an easy fix that is temporary and that may have long-term implications. Now, technology is very important. So I think you lead by example as far as how and when to use it, and to make it something that supplements your life and makes your life easier, but it's not the center of your life. Like without it, you'll be fine. You know, a lot of like kids who grow up strictly on this screen, if like they don't have it, they get upset. You know what I mean? Because you have to be very careful because it's like a drug almost, right? You have dopamine hits, right? When the screen flashes or when you're watching your favorite show, it's like TV. It's like young kids, like some parents limited TV, you know, for good reason. If you just sat there and watched TV, you'd be just mind numbing you know, and just never do anything. So it's kind of the same premise, especially if you start being on social media apps and other things. You know, that addictiveness, you have to remember like companies spend billions of dollars researching and creating the most addictive platform they can. They do human research, biology, like psychology, video games, all of these companies do this to figure out how can we keep people on our platform. So, and they'll do everything. Like we know this creates a dopamine hit. We know people get addicted to this. So we're going to keep doing it. That's why TikTok is so addictive. TikTok like mastered it so much so that they created a setting to put limits on their own platform. I don't know if it was like a government thing or whatever, but on their own platform, there's a hey, you've been scrolling for an hour. You want to stop now? Like it's crazy. Like they've gotten that, and that affects your attention span. The greatest accomplishments take attention. It takes focus. And if we just only have 10 seconds before we get bored and swipe, you're never going to focus on anything, right? And never and we quit and we move on to the next thing because that's kind of like how you grew up. So, you know, I would suggest lay those foundations first and have technology there because you don't want them to be just clueless about technology. Technology is a huge factor, and you will be set back in life if you don't know technology. But having those foundations of what it's used for and where it should be used and where it should not be used, I would suggest is that balance. So, yeah.
It's a great answer. Thank you. Is there anything that I should have asked you about today?
No, I hope this was helpful. You know, you can find me online. You can search Sam Asra online. And my program's called Fathers Connect. You can Google that, fathersconnect.co. Little shameless plug there, but but yeah, that's it for me. You have any questions? Anything that you want me to touch on?
I was just going to say, where should people find you, which you've covered, and any closing thoughts for us today?
Um, yes, there's one thing. I would say for fathers out there who are listening to this, I want you to take home practical, like we talked a lot about all these things, hypotheticals theory, but just one practical thing is go to your son and daughter the next time you talk to them and just ask questions. Ask about them. Hey, like, what classes are you in? What's the teacher's name? Who are the friends you hang out with? Just ask a question. One question every conversation. And you'd be surprised at how much you start learning. So I would challenge fathers out there. If you're like, where do I start? There's a million things. Just ask a question just about them that you don't know already.
This is a great principle, and yeah, I do feel I feel pretty good about where I'm at. So it's not like I'm guilty of a load of stuff. So, but I do think that it's always important to have reminders, and I think that you'll be able to help a lot of dads. And also, actually, I was thinking that a lot of this stuff is universal, so it applies to parents in generally. It's just that your market is dads, which is great because I think, as you said, they're underserved. But generally speaking, it's all good parenting principles. So I wanted to say thank you for your contribution in general, and then also thank you for being a great guest today.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.